It began to resist his malice. A last alliance of elves and men marched forth against his... The Dark Lord Sauron was overthrown that day, and the One Ring slipped from his iron grasp. And with its loss, Sauron was at last undone. But the power of the ring was not destroyed, and for as long as the ring exists, the spirit of Sauron lives on in our world. But the ring refused its new master and was lost, and for 2,500 years, Middle-earth was free of its evil. In the Third Age, war came again to Middle-earth, as the will of Sauron searched anew for his ring. The Dark Lord compelled many into his service, including Saruman, a once great and wise wizard. Thus war came to Rohan, forcing King Theoden to seek refuge in the fortress of Helm's Deep. And now a vast army shall assault these ancient walls with siege ladders and war machines. To survive, the defenders must hold the Deeping Wall and the gate to the keep, but all must beware the devilry of Saruman's devices. Through the bravery and sacrifice of many, King Theoden has led the people of Rohan to victory. But the danger has not passed, for the pits of Isengard and Moria yet remain, and Sauron directs all evil from atop his dark tower. Yet the seeds of resistance have been planted, for Gondor still stands defiant, and an ancient slumbering power has now awakened to aid their cause. And in this great war, the White Wizard shall lead us, for it is his destiny to contest Sauron for the fate of all of Middle-earth. Trusting his army had destroyed Theoden's people at Helm's Deep, Saruman believed himself secure in his tower of Orthanc. But the ringed walls of Isengard proved no defense against the vengeance of Ents and men. And within Saruman's pits, many wrathful Rohan prisoners awaited liberation, while his machineries belch foul vapors. Above, Saruman directs his defense and marshals his sorcery, for the battle is far from certain. And now Ent and Rohirrim alike must face Saruman's wrath. His power shattered, Saruman could not prevail against the courage that was arrayed against him, and in the end, his betrayal was avenged. Treebeard now serves as master of Orthanc, and the pits of Isengard have been cleansed of Saruman's filth. But the Dark Lord's power has not been broken, for Saruman served merely as a pawn, a distraction to weaken Gondor's borders. Within Mordor, the armies of Sauron grow, and his war has hardly begun. To the north, the mines of Moria also grow ever more deadly. Here, in times past, Gandalf cast down the Balrog after days of combat. That terrible battle cost him his very life, but permitted the Ring-bearer to escape those dark and dreadful halls. But the great underground city of Moria still remains a breeding pit for goblins and other foul things. Now is the moment when the free people must at last reclaim Moria, and Gimli the dwarf shall lead them. Yet all must remain wary, for fissures open everywhere, and Gandalf fears that a new evil might stalk those ancient halls. At last the Balrog of Morgoth is broken and has been cast down, returning to the bottomless pits of Moria. The ancestral home of the dwarves has now been reclaimed, and the creatures that infested it flee our wrath. But Moria's liberators dare not tarry, for the Dark Lord Sauron has now unleashed his armies upon the world, and all the free people must hasten to its defense. Osgiliath shall play yet another part in this war. Faramir brought the Ring-bearer here, but wisely allowed him to continue his quest. Now a garrison of Gondor's defenders keep watch, ever wary. The warriors that hold this outpost secretly hope for Faramir and his Ithilien rangers to return at dawn. But the ranks of the orcs continue to swell, and hope alone is but a flimsy shield. Silence shrouds the far shore of the Anduin as the defenders of Osgiliath are left alone to sharpen their fears. In the gathering darkness, dawn cannot arrive swiftly enough for these brave men of Gondor. Faramir fights valiantly against the forces of Mordor, but his warriors cannot all stand before the relentless tide. Many share a grim fate, and few survive the onrushing horror. Sauron's massive armies continue their great assault against us all. The remaining defenders of the West are the enemy's final barrier, for they wish to slay all who remain within Middle-earth. The enemy is as countless as the leaves of the forest, and hope seems lost, for the Dark Lord cares not how many shall fall. Now the darkness falls upon Gondor, and Minas Tirith is encircled by a ring of iron-shod malice. Great siege towers lumber towards the beleaguered walls, each burdened with a deadly orc horde. Upon the main gate, the Dark Lord unleashes Grond, a terrible battering ram of wolf-like wrath. For hope of victory, Gondor's warriors must hold each ring of their city for as long as they're able, before retreating deeper within their burning citadel. But in the darkest hour, horns echo through the city. For an ancient oath has been fulfilled, and Rohan has come at last. Theoden has emptied the north, and his horsemen dare risk all. The orcs must abandon the city and face this looming threat. And now, upon the open fields of battle, shall the fate of Gondor be decided. Riding to death and ruin in relief of Minas Tirith, the riders of Rohan smash into the heart of the orc army. Nothing upon the fields of Pelennor can resist their fury. Beset on all sides by siege towers and great war beasts, Theoden's brave warriors must also overcome an endless tide of orcs and warg riders. But should the Rohirrim do sufficient damage to Sauron's armies, surely the Witch King shall be drawn forth. His defeat would turn the tide of battle, for it is said that fear binds them to his cause. Still, the battle hangs in precarious balance, until at last Aragorn appears with the army of the dead. Then nothing that lives can survive their wrath. Great as our victory might seem, this war is not yet won. The Dark Lord still gathers strength behind the walls of Morgul. To draw the eye of Sauron far from the Ringbearer, even greater sacrifices must now be endured. The men of the West must confront him upon his borders, and within his realm, and even dare to assault the Dark Lord himself. In ages past, the Dark Lord seized Minas Morgul and corrupted it with vile sorcery. It became the Witch King's foul domain, illuminated still by pale corpse-light. Both orcs and Sauron's magic guard this fortress, sapping the strength of all who venture near. And hovering above, ringwraiths still guard this city well. Through siegecraft and strength of arms, the men of the West must shatter the gates of this citadel and subdue the evil within. Brave warriors drove many foul creatures from Minas Morgul, but the evil that taints this city cannot be fully cleansed. Even should the city be razed, no man would dare dwell there so long as Sauron still lives. So our ordeal is not yet concluded. For to defeat Sauron utterly, the Ringbearer must first destroy the One Ring in the fires of Mount Doom. A small, brave army stands at last within the jaws of Sauron's trap. But the courage of men will not fail, and their hope will not fade. For they hold that their sacrifice at the Black Gate of Mordor shall gain time for Frodo to at last destroy the One Ring. And in this final hour, the captains of the West must continue to fight for their freedom, while their breath still remains. There was no hope of survival in that final hour for any who stood upon the battlefield, yet they did not despair. Although their enemies drew near and their arms grew weary, no man held fear in his heart. But fate decreed our world was not destined to end in that hour. For the power of the ring corrupted all it touched, in ways that even its evil spirit could not imagine. And in that final, desperate moment, the ring-bearer fulfilled his quest. In a single heartbeat, the Dark Lord Sauron was no more. In truth, our victory was won by the smallest of things. Our fate balanced upon the edge of a knife. But then, when hope at last prevailed, that knife turned and plunged deep into the heart of our enemy. And victory, at last, was ours. Remember always that upon those grim battlefields, the hearts of the free peoples did not fail, and their courage did not falter. And thus the Third Age of Middle-earth ended in triumph, and not despair. Weakened by the One Ring's power, at last Frodo claims it for himself, and the very foundations of Middle-earth are shaken. The Dark Lord desperately hopes for his very body to be restored to him. But to stride forth upon Middle-earth once more, Sauron requires Frodo's ring, and for this he will gladly pay any price. At the Dark Lord's command, his Nazgul now hasten to Mount Doom, all other thoughts banished from their minds. They obey but a single deadly aim, to slay Frodo and gain the ring, now that it lies within Sauron's grasp. Many Orc garrisons boldly dare to covet the ring for themselves, rising up in riot and civil war, and marching upon Mount Doom. But the onrushing Nazgul shall tolerate no delay, and will slay any dark servant who dares block their path. Caring not at all the cost, the Dark Lord's servants have regained for him the One Ring. Sensing that the tide has turned, the free people of Middle-earth must now retreat and prepare to defend their realms. The power of Sauron is restored, and few who still survive this war dare hope to oppose him. But the Dark Lord's pride remains stung by Gondor's recent victories, and he intends to extract full retribution. With new and vast powers, Sauron now resurrects his fallen chattel. He calls again to life many of his darkest heroes and champions, to slay once more in his name. Crossing the River Anduin under a blanket of darkness, an Orc scouting force begins Sauron's renewed assault upon our world. The Orc onslaught will be launched at midnight, striking like a dagger at the heart of Osgiliath. The most deadly blow shall be struck by an elite horde, lying in wait upon the far shore. Their siege machines are poised to rain fire down upon the hated rangers. The Orcs await signals from hidden scouts to identify their targets. For those dark hearts wish greatly to see Osgiliath burn. The Dark Lord must be pleased, for a ruined city has once more been ground beneath the boot of the Orc. Faramir and all of his men are shown no mercy, nor did they expect to receive it. And for Sauron's hordes, the road is again laid open into the heartland of Gondor. Now, within the camps of Mordor, the Dark Lord calls forth fresh legions. For this time he shall utterly crush those who dare stand against him. Minas Tirith is breached. The gates are shattered and the lower walls of the city are overrun. The men of Gondor attempt a valiant defense, but Sauron's hordes have taken full measure of this frail city, and they will not be denied. The guards of the citadel shall defend their city to the last man, and it may soon come to that. They all fear the end draws near, for the darkness is nearly complete. Upon every level, Minas Tirith is burning. The gates lie shattered and the lower circles of the city are overrun. From the hallows where dead kings of Gondor watch in horror, to the white tree that burns, all is now in ruin. Orcs now hold banquet in the white tower of Ecthelion, and desecrate both king and commoner alike. Thus passes Minas Tirith, the White City, and with it the best hope for the world of men. The war must go on, but we have been grievously harmed. Upon their relentless march, the armies of Mordor must now pass through the mines of Moria. It is here that Gimli has chosen to make his final stand, but he and the other survivors have had no time to prepare their defenses. And Moria yet remains a dark and dangerous realm for all who dare enter its gates. It is feared that Sauron holds knowledge of Moria's darkest secrets, and has charged his force with a terrible ritual. For the sake of the dwarf and his followers, we must hope the Dark Lord's power cannot yet call into this world a Balrog of Morgoth. The flame of Udun has been unleashed again upon the world of Middle-earth, and like his kin, the dwarf Gimli and all who dared follow him into the darkness have been slain by this creature. Moria now remains forever a place of evil that none dare enter. And now his Nazgul venture forth once more to search out the Dark Lord's final victims. The armies of the West have been forced to make their final stand upon the ruins of Weathertop. Here, in ages past, the Witch King led his great host in terrible victory. And here the northern armies of men were crushed, the tower of Amon-Sul reduced to ruin. Now the broken stones of this place shall bear witness to a last desperate struggle, for there can no longer be any retreat from the onrushing forces of darkness. Aragorn, descendant of Isildur and king of all the free peoples, was at last vanquished. Our last and greatest hope for victory was in the end thrown down by the same barbaric creatures who killed his father years before. Now the ranks of the Dark Lord swell as a rising tide of malice and hatred, and all shall be overwhelmed by that great black wave. Rivendell has become an island, storms raging upon all sides. The last elves of Middle-earth have gathered with me here to make our final stand. Should the elves of Rivendell fail to halt Sauron's onrushing tide, little will remain to resist the smothering darkness. We must sacrifice our immortality here, in service of all that yet survives in Middle-earth. My people could not defeat the Orc horde. Only a handful survived to carry on the fight. I was one of those unfortunate few. Only the kindest and most pure of Middle-earth's inhabitants still remain. And now the shadow of the Dark Lord prepares to fall upon them as well. At last the Dark Lord's iron fist encircles the innocents of the Shire. There will be no, but all must face an overwhelming enemy. Warg riders and great war beasts mass for the attack, and none left alive can withstand their power. Perhaps at last the Dark Lord himself shall come forth to gloat in his triumph. Perhaps then, with Gandalf, we might sell our own lives most dearly. In desperation, Treebeard leads the final march of the Ents. With their aid, and with many halfling archers, perhaps the Shire can resist for a brief while. Bonfire, into which halfling bodies are thrown. Even the great wizard Gandalf could not stand before the Dark Lord. He has fallen and cannot be restored. His purpose here has ended. Those who did not fight in this war shall now become the final victims. Their homes shall be burnt, and the future of their children shall be sacrificed upon Sauron's cruel altar. Death and ruin are all that shall remain. For the Dark Lord's cruelty will know no limits, and in the end all shall be destroyed. For now the darkness has covered all living things, and it has claimed us all.